Hey guys, welcome to the last part of this series following The Watcher, and this one is called Crime Never Sleeps. Hopefully I'll be bringing more research into it. This is the final episode. I've been working on this and other research related to portable executables, as well as doing, of course, work. So yeah, let's crack right into it. From this series, what was clear from me looking at all of this was that information taken from a victim can be colossal, even if it's not what was first intended. A lot of the victims in this case were really interesting, and something that I took real big note of is that this is a crime actor with not the best ability, and yet they were able to get information that I would think is quite critical in all cases. In this case, it is a classic crime-based victim, but it's weird because this victim is a threat actor, a criminal in their own right. So it is quite weird to see this side. So essentially, I'm watching a criminal who's also watching a criminal. So it is quite interesting. But the main thing for me is I still don't know the reasons for infection. The information from the victim can be colossal. And the leaks show it's important to society financially and through security. I've got the bullet points down. You just need to read them. Cool. So this is what this first looked like. When I looked at this victim, this is their desktop, their area. This could be anyone. This could be a developer. This could be someone that's freely just using VNC, which is very clear to large portions of the screen. We see TeamViewer, we see SendSpace, we see WinSCP here. I think that's an FTP application. We see maybe WP content in Chrome, which is WordPress, which I later probably think is a shell. But in actual terms, this could be literally anyone at the moment. So I was like, this could be anyone. Interesting that they had access to this, large portions of infrastructure by the looks of it. And then we go to the second screenshot, where there's references to drops. There's the use of Notepad for communication, which is quite interesting. The word logs, money, and then eat as well. That really shows me something else that I'm used to hearing when I hear them terminologies, especially the Notepad bit. That's when I'm like, maybe crime, maybe these people are doing bad things. So I looked further into it and I got confirmation from it. They were using card details from other people. They were using randomness of information from victims and try and get into various areas. But from when I first saw this, I've censored most parts out. There's a few things to make this a little bit easier. So, of course, the victim's birthday, their address of somewhat, just to show that this is in some ways legitimate information. These people are communicating a Notepad, of course, for forensic purposes, to remove making it harder for people to see their communication and being able to understand what they're saying. If you had it in IRC, in Jabber or XMPP or Skype or somewhere, it's much easier to record that and put that into a system. While of course you could probably maybe get some details of the communication. Forensically, it's much harder, obviously, if someone is communicating in Notepad. And we've most likely got the victim's mail information there, which is quite annoying to see because you're sitting here watching these people. I mean, this is screenshots from the start of 2019, so there's nothing I can do except from watch this story unfold. So watching it, we start to see them with a little bit of rushed information. They seem to be both quite worried, whoever they are, individuals, he, her, whatever. They seem quite worried, of course. They seem rushed, which is quite normal, I guess, for low-level crime actors. When I mean low-level, obviously, crime actors, they can get huge amounts of money, but these are low level in the fact that their sophistication in my eyes is low, and as well as that they have a lack of operational security and understanding, of course, because this has happened, so they don't fully understand what's going on there. and they seem to rely on other things, other people to be doing things. They seem to be obviously a cog in the machine. So as we can see, from my understanding, it appears to be two people who are only communicating through Notepad, and there are screenshots that I don't show here. There are screenshots of them trying to purchase VPS services and low-level, low-cost virtual private servers, which are Windows, making it much easier for them to pivot. But they do have a good understanding. This guy's team viewed into either someone else's server or a location of some sort. They've got basic technological understanding of how to maneuver things, what works, obviously. The weird thing about this as well is that they're not using correct Windows, and they also got these annoying sense-based notifications that happen. It's quite annoying to see. Personally, for me, I'm not a fan of it, but they have technological understanding from what I can view, but they are rushed and they do make mistakes, of course, because they've been infected. So like I say, crime threat actor. I've loaded a few of these IPs just in case someone's watching this video and wants to check over their own infrastructure, or maybe just have some interest if they've got access to certain platforms. But there's a large amount of evidence on all these IPs that they're being used for abuse in some way. I don't have huge amounts of information when it comes down to what shells and what packages they use, apart from the screenshots, which is quite annoying. But I could see that they were using WinSCP, and I can see a load of different stuff which I'm going to show you. But what's interesting is that I'm just getting the insight of an attacker within an attacker, which is, for me, really strange. The other thing that's really strange about this, again, the Samsung sense-based thing. I don't know what was going on in this victim, but they decided that this was acceptable on their desktop. The one thing that I was quite interested in is this was in a pharmacy. So this is local, as we can see, 10.1 and 192. These I identified as being in a pharmacy, and that's a shop. I think based in Africa. I'm not going to lead to any more questions or speculation on that. If I was to be doing an investigation, if people have financial interest in it, I guess I would be digging deeper and certainly looking at what happened there. But of course, I'm not going to speculate on what pharmacy it was or where I think it was located and the possibilities of the attacker locating there. It was just an interesting piece that I saw in activity from the attacker that I was very dumbstruck. I was very interested in why that happened, why I was able to see that, and what in relation to the attacker that has. But of course, for now, it's speculation. Back here, we've got evidence, of course, of brute forcing lists and using tools to brute force certain infrastructure. Pretty common for crime actors to be doing brute force attacks on various infrastructure using word lists and getting success. So that was pretty interesting, of course, this being the IPs on this side. And there is showing the actual tool most likely in place with a bunch of IPs being put in here. So it was pretty obvious they were using other people's tools. I didn't see any evidence of development of code of themselves. They were using, as we can see here, desktop vscan with an extra end. So they are kind of vulnerable to being infected themselves, which is more common than people think from other crime actors. I mean, we recently had that report of the possibility of a Russian APT targeting and successfully exploiting an Iranian APT. It's the exact same idea, but in a crime-based manner. Sometimes it may not be intentional, sometimes it is, but to be able to get extra resources, quick wins. So if you've got a low-level crime actor that you can infect that has infrastructure that you don't have to associate yourself in, so the exploitation of it or the how you gain these credentials is beneficial to some threat actors, and it mixes the pot as well, because in attribution terms, or trying to identify attackers' activity, if someone initially has come in brute forcing, you can understand that activity and that thread of activity. But if someone has been able to simply seamlessly put the credentials in, that is much harder to identify for obvious reasons. Again, rushed conversation between these two. You know, they're really saying they're struggling. You know, there's a lot of expletives, very low results logs. They're really unhappy with their output and what's going on here. And they continue this conversation where they're quite both having a little bit of a tiff with each other, talking about if CIBC is, which is a Canadian bank, but they're talking about preparations and being ready and getting prepared for that, and investing by the looks of it in a time and a new tool, which is really interesting to see. The sort of operational procedure ideas from two individuals that are crime-based threat actors, that they're rushing, they're having to do this, they're thinking about the future as well, their investment and their returns. So we can see in the background here in this server, we've got two banks. We've got the RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, I believe that is. I'm not completely convinced. And then we've also got CIBC. I'm not actually familiar with these banks because I'm in the UK. I really dislike in the background there's a police alarm, but this is just the problems with living in a city, I guess. But going back to this, we can see there's the more expletives, bad fraud alert. It's not going well for these guys. They're really trying. They keep getting fraud alerts, which is good for the other side, I guess. For the financial sector, this is good that their risks technology, the things they're using to detect fraud, is working. And they're talking about, even with their extra resources they've got in this, they are currently failing and need to, as they say, move fast apparently, which is interesting to see, because it looks like they're getting more and more desperate to be able to gain funds. And they're one of them's trying to convince to work in force. That's going to be very good. He told him this and he said I did. So obviously one of them has obviously convinced the other, this is the way to go, this is what we need to do. Whether that person's more experienced or has brought that person into this is another matter. But yeah, start doing on the moves. The logs, they're all ready and stuff like this. So they're in preparation. They're in quite what you would expect from attacking the crime-based threat actor is quite a harsh moment in the job, I guess, for them, is that they're really trying to push this and they're not getting much success. They've got further here where they're rushing. We have a lot of drops. I can't remember when our last CIB strike was, so I'm guessing that was the last successful moment when we got that. We're going to move into the accounts and see how much money they start trying to move over. And this is a bit further of what I'm discussing previously. The main one I want to discuss here is I need you to be a bit patient so I don't rush it. So obviously they're trying to convince each other that this is the way to go. We need to be professional about this. Really interesting to see that they're both trying to convince each other what's the best moment, the strategic idea that we've got to do here. But they're fairly still confident that they're going to be successful in this. So they've obviously done as it says there, previous CIB strike, but they say, from looking at this conversation, to me that ultimately looks like they're being successful. Your first work the fools list as much as you can. We have enough of work, so they're, from the logs that they're claiming there, you can read that, but for me the idea is that they've got quite a lot going on and they're really rushing to get whatever it is out. And then there's more convincing here. It's just interesting to see the amount of rushing that they're doing here. There's a reference to EMT as well here, which I believe is financial. I did do a little bit of research on it about a system, but it looks like they're trying to be more sophisticated, interfere with EMT-S. If I'm being wrong, you can definitely tell me in the comments down below. But that was definitely something that I was interested in. So this is them inside a system, of course, inside someone's bank account, and of course this is relatively quite a lot of money is available to them. When you think about it, you see the mortgage payment, line of credit. There's quite a lot of things that they could change and manipulate, which is quite upsetting to see. Then they're here. This is a really interesting one as well. She is going on now, loading. I hope is not dead. I first thought they were talking about the victim, but now I'm more inclined, because they say here he is saying in 15 min she is. I'm more inclined to see that as a money mule, someone that is actually collecting, going into financial and putting the cards, duplicating them in some way, and trying to get it out. Because in a later conversation, they also start talking about he needs to act cool, he needs to get that money out, but that's too much money to get out at that time. So I'm more inclined to talk about, so in this point, I think they are genuinely, there's a victim here, and they're viewing and they're wanting to see the money go out. And that's why they currently are viewing the account on their server, TeamViewer, which is why looks like they're being so rushed and so tense at this single point, and they're saying 15 minutes. So they're saying they start talking about the weather, which is the weirdest thing about this. That after that, obviously they've got a little bit of free time, and then they just start talking about, like, as you would in any workplace, start talking about the weather and it's snowing already, which is a bit peculiar to me. So yeah, quite funny to see that as well. So yeah, then we start seeing them look at deposit details and the balance and past transactions, and then visit there. The interesting thing is that if you look at the bottom right, I'm highlighting the time between them looking at snowing already and then switching back to deposit account details and checking that. So it's more than likely that it might be successful in there. So it wasn't just one bank either, as you might have seen already. So there's also this one, the Royal Bank of Canada, or Scotia Bank, I think this one is. So they were targeting, by the looks of it, banks mostly in Canada, which was interesting to note. We've got the credit limit. It's obvious that they've got links to people in Canada because they have people that are saying they're going to get money out. So yeah, not too unfamiliar with Canada, but it was just simply Canada targeting. Then we've got obviously this, which is related to financial details again, and the information that they receive is really quite strange to me. So this 3K, like, very detailed what they have, limit of 25k, the date of birth, fine, and then the questions as well they got. And also this as well, this is incredible, transit number, institution number, the account number, all of this given to the criminal actor to funnel out money in a bank. And most of these say this is a main authentication mechanism for a large amount of banks, and they've got them listed here in their notepad ready to go. So yeah, it's they talk further about this, and 10 to 12 CIBC ready, which is, in my eyes, a lot of money. We've got a visa.jpg, so possible identification of or credentials from the victim, or a visa of some sort. So they could be diversified. I mean, that's down to speculation. But from looking at this, we can see security, reset security, successful options in here, bills as well in paint. So that they seem to be very, very planned out on this. Too much work till Christmas. They start talking about how much money. We can see another victim possibly, or their email. They're there in Outlook, so they're accessing multiple emails at the same time. And then we can see here as well, looking at the savings and the checking account. And this is where they start talking about the suspicious nature, and how it's a bit hard to ask like 10-15k cash. They will be suspicious unless the guy looks good. So added account, signed papers for it, like approved account by them. So they are actually funneling money out at this point, and they look to be saying, unless the guy looks good. I can't speculate whether this is in Canada or they're transferring and then trying to get someone out in a different country. But is only Eric. That appears to be a name. They have multiple people working with them by the looks of it. But it's just interesting to see, one, the amount of money that they're expecting to get out or trying to get out. And talking about a guy must look good to be able to sort this out. And then we start to see bank withdrawals between different banks. So these are all different banks, as we can see, Bank 1, Bank 2, obviously censored from me, but you can see in £3,000 intervals on the same day, of course. But yeah, so they seem to be trying to withdraw money, sorry. And then they're talking about this is really how much information, not card information pasted on the victims. That's me just poorly doing slides. But you know, they're discussing how much work they've been putting into it, not showering for almost 3 days. So obviously this is a huge piece of work for them, and they're trying to funnel large funds, £3,000, 3 different banks at one time. So a lot of organisation to do there. And also there is a lot of shells, so hopefully I've not censored parts of this. Fantastic. Well, I'm sure it's public, and if it isn't, then it should be. But they've got a lot of shells that they're also using. I didn't want to show too much of that because it can get quite boring, but essentially they had unlimited. I'm sure they actually probably was buying these. There was no indication of them hacking into websites. They seem to have a humongous list of potential shells on the internet, which was interesting to see. So what I can show is financial information, obviously, from the victims. They seem to connect to a lot of stuff, which I didn't know at points I didn't know whether to show this, because parts of it looked not completely, it looked like they were just about in, and I didn't want to show other parts of people's infrastructure, so I thought it best, especially when it comes down to Windows VMs, where there was CCTV or there was POS systems in relation to that. So it was interesting to see this, and that they were successful in some manner, but at the same time, I didn't want to show and give these guys really so the victims a hard time. So yeah, really interesting case where you can see from them rushing, trying to get things out inside the bank accounts, all that information, and transferring into 3 banks, and using relatively basic tools to do so, but knowing their trade and what to do and strategically do. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I think that's the last slide. It is. And that's the last of the series. Give me a comment down below if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.